lesson 2.5. Today we're going to be talking about subtracting integers. So last lesson we were talking about adding integers, and if you would remember, we had several different rules that we kind of talked about. Well, when subtracting integers, we have two different rules that we're going to talk about. So the first thing to keep in mind when you're subtracting integers is that when you're subtracting a number, it's the same thing as adding a negative number. So if you subtract a positive or add a negative, however way you say it, you're going to get the same answer. So let's go ahead and look at some examples and visualize them on the number line to see if we can figure out how to make this rule work. So the first rule says that if you have -4 minus 2, since we just said that subtracting a number is the same as adding a negative, we could do -4 plus -2. So instead of -2, we have plus -2. Now, you might think, why on earth would we have to do that? But if you think about it, the last lesson we did was adding integers. So in this one, now we're adding. So now we use the same rules that we did last time. So when you're adding two negatives, if you remember, we add them together and then we just keep the negative sign. So -4 plus -2 will give us -6. Let's look at that on the number line. So if we start at -4, so I'm going to start at -4, and I'm going to go ahead and add -2 or take 2 away, however you want to say it. And then we're going to go over 1, 2, and you'll see that our answer is -6. Let's go ahead and look at a different example with the same rule. If we have a +3 minus 6, we could also say +3 plus -6. So instead of -6, we could say plus -6. It's the same thing. Let's go ahead and look at it on a number line. If we started at 3, +3, and we took 6 away or added a -6, we would go this direction because anything negative goes to the left of the number line. So we're going to go ahead and go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we will land on the number -3. So that will give us our answer. And if you remember, if you're adding a negative number and the absolute value of the negative number is bigger than the absolute value of the positive number, that means we're taking more away than what we have, so we'll be in the negatives. So that's why our answer is negative for that one. Alright, another rule that you need to keep in mind is that when subtracting a negative number, it is the same as adding a number. Or sorry, when you're subtracting a negative number, it's the same as adding a number. So what do I mean by that? If you look at this example, you have 5 minus -4. Now if you do 5 minus -4, so subtracting a negative, it's the same as adding a positive. So you can think in your head, minus a negative is the same as plus a positive. So you can kind of make these positive signs and add them together. Now why can we do that? If you think about it, minus negative, you have two negative things, so they're canceling each other out, so now you're adding it. So let's go ahead and look at it on the number line. So if we start at +5, so I'm going to start at +5 on the number line, and then it says, I'm not going to take away 4. So I'm not going to take away 4, I'm going to add 4. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and our answer is now going to be 9. So what looked a little more complex at the beginning with a minus and negative is really something simple, just adding. Alright, let's look at another example of that. If we have 6 minus -3, it's the same as 6 plus 3. Because if we start at 6 right here, and we're not going to take away 3, so we're not going to take them away, we're going to add 3. So we're going to go ahead and go 1, 2, 3, and our answer is also going to be 9 for that one as well. Alright, let's go ahead and do a few examples. Alright, let's go ahead and look at the first example. Our first example says 14 minus 17. So if you remember in the rules that we just said, that subtracting a number is the same thing as adding a negative. So if this would help you, you can change it to 14 plus -17, and then you can go ahead and use our rules from the last lesson. So in our last lesson rules, if you're, you can go ahead and subtract them. So 17 minus 14, and you're going to get 3. And then we go ahead and take the sign of the biggest number. So the absolute value of 17 is bigger than the absolute value of 14, so we're going to take a negative. So our answer is going to be -3 for number 1. Because we're taking away more than what we have, so we're going to be in the negatives. Alright, number 2. we have negative 4 minus 8. So if you remember the rule, subtracting a number is the same as adding a negative. So we're going to go ahead and do negative 4 plus negative 8. So now we can use our adding rules. So if you're adding two negatives, you just add them up and keep the negative sign. So 8 plus 4 is going to give us 8, 12 with our negative sign. So we're keeping our negative sign. Alright, number 3. We have a 14 minus negative 10. Okay, if you remember our rules that we just talked about, a minus and negative is the same as a plus, a positive, because remember we're not going to subtract. So we're going to add. So 14 plus 10 is going to give us a positive 24. Alright, let's go ahead and look at example number 4. So if we have negative 11 minus 9, we are not going to subtract. And we have a negative 11 plus a positive now. So let's go ahead and subtract them. So we're going to have to take away this many from this. So take it away. 8. We're going to have 2. And then the absolute value of 11 is bigger than the absolute value of 9. So our answer is going to have this sign. So it's going to be negative 2 because we're taking away more than what we have. So negative 2. Okay, number 5. We have negative 3 minus a negative 1. We're going to do the same rule. Instead of a minus negative, we're going to do a plus positive because we're not going to subtract. So now we're going to go ahead and since we have a negative 3, we're going to take 3 away from 1. And when we take 3 away from 1, we're going to be in the negatives because the absolute value of 3 is bigger than the absolute value of 1. So we're going to take the negative sign and we're going to have a negative 2 is going to be in our answer. Alright, number 6, we are going to be using variables, but I gave you what the variables are equal to so we can solve. So we don't have to simplify, we can solve. So we have q minus r. So if q is equal to negative 14 and r is equal to 6, or negative 6, let's go ahead and plug in for our variables. So q is negative 14, and then we're going to minus whatever r is, which is negative 6. Okay, I see a minus and negative, so I can think in my head, okay, minus negative plus positive because I'm not going to subtract. So then we're going to go ahead and find the answer. So I'm looking at my two numbers, and the absolute value of negative 14 is bigger than the absolute value of 6. So my answer is going to be a negative number because I'm taking away more than what I have. And then we go ahead and subtract them, and you'll find out that we are taking 8 away. So we have a negative 8 as our answer. Okay, last example we're going to do is a word problem. So we're going to have to read the problem, come up with our own expression, and then solve it. Okay, so it says the sea surface temperatures range from negative 2 degrees Celsius to 31 degrees Celsius. Find the difference between the minimum and maximum temperatures. Alright, so when I'm reading this word problem, one word stands out in particular to me because it's going to tell me what operation to do. I saw the word difference. So it says find what? Find the difference. Now, what is the difference? If you remember, the difference is the answer to a subtraction problem. So I'm going to be subtracting some kind of numbers. What numbers am I going to subtract? So find the difference between the maximum temperature and the minimum temperature. So what is the maximum and what is the minimum temperature? So I'm going to go back to the beginning of the word problem to see some of the information that they gave us. So they gave us negative 2 degrees Celsius and 31 degrees Celsius. So between the minimum and the maximum. So let's go ahead and subtract them. So if I have negative 2 minus 31, what is my answer going to be? So we have a negative 2, and then remember minus a positive is the same as plus a negative. So I'm going to do plus negative 31. I'm doing this because it's easier for me to add it that way. So then if I add 31 and 2 together, I'm going to get 33. And my sign is going to have to be negative because both of my numbers are negative. Alright. As always, make sure that you have your notes done. Watch these examples again if you need to. Come to class tomorrow with your questions, or you can look back in the book at more examples. And now we're going to go ahead and do some problems on your own, so let's go ahead and look at those.
Alright, you have 5 problems to do for me. Number 1, do 10 minus 30. Number 2, do negative 2 minus 23. Number 3, do 5 minus negative 16. And number 4, do r minus 15 if r is equal to negative 6. Do number 5, which is p minus q, if p is equal to 8 and q is equal to negative 4. We'll see what you get tomorrow. Good luck.